Hello, everybody, and welcome to the monthly Happy Lawyer series. I am Kristen Mackintosh, the Happy Lawyer at Schweitzer and Associates, and this month we are going to be tackling what every business owner needs to know about estate planning. We're going to be covering some options to consider for when you are planning on retiring, as well as touching on some options that should be included should you become incapacitated, or what's going to happen to your business when you die. So first, a little bit about me. I am Kristen Mackintosh, and I am the Happy Lawyer. And the reason a lot of people are puzzled, like, how can you be happy and be a lawyer? Well, I look back and says, who says you can't be happy and be a lawyer? I say you can be both. And I am happy because I love what I'm doing, and I love working with my clients and crafting unique plans and helping them plan for their future, their families, as well as for their businesses. So let's get into why. Why is planning for retirement so important when you own your business? Well, let's face it, running a business is a full-time commitment. And we have a lot of things on our plate. We're not only running the business, but we, may have health issues. We have, desires to spend time with our loved ones and our family. We want to have a life outside the office. And, because of that, we're not planning on running our business until the day that we die. Now, some of you out there might be, and that's okay on there. But most of us business owners want to build up a successful business, and then at some point, hopefully while we're still in good health, be able to retire from that business and start enjoying life and, taking time out to spend time with our family or to go on trips, those kind of things, and not worry about the business. But we need to have a smooth transition laid out for how we're going to be able to retire from our business. It's not something that most of us just wake up one day and say, that's it, I'm retiring, done, close the business. There are things that usually have to occur before we can actually retire from our business. So to ensure a smooth transition and to make sure that you have the money, and money's important to enjoy your retirement years, it's crucial that you plan ahead, and you need to start planning now. So yes, if you own a business, you need to look into retirement planning for business owners. But when you're that business owner, unlike an employee where, employees usually have, retirement plans set up through work, we business owners don't always have that luxury because our business is our, potential retirement plan, the asset of it. So when you're planning for retirement as a business owner, it requires proactivity and strategy. You have a lot of choices out there. You need to decide if the business is going to, is the business going to continue running when you retire? And if so, who is going to run the business? Are you going to sell the business to a third party or to someone whom you know? Are you going to pass that business on, keep it within the family? What's going to happen to the business when you die? Is the business, again, do you have a plan laid out for who's going to take over the business? Or do you have a plan laid out for how the business is going to be wound down? Who's going to step up and take on that responsibility? So let's talk about some of the options that we have available. So when you're planning on transferring the company during your lifetime, you've got a couple of options, and we're going to touch on 3 of those today. First will be the third party transfer. The second is the family transfer, and then we have the employee transfer. Now, keep in mind, deciding to step away from your business is the easy part, but the hard part comes into how are we going to transfer the business? What's going to happen to it when we retire? So let's look at these few options, and there are a lot of other options out there. So I'm just touching on these here. So first, let's talk about selling to a third party.
Sold.
And that's exactly what happens. We offer our business up for sale, and hopefully a buyer comes forward and says, sold. I want to buy your business. Now, that's great, right? Because the benefits are you receive the cash at closing. There's no waiting around. You don't have to finance the transaction when you sell to a third party, because that third party is either going to buy your business and assets for cash, or they're going to have secured a loan or go out and secure a loan to purchase the business, so that you will receive full payment for that business upfront on the day of closing. Great, right? You don't have to wait around for them to make monthly payments to you like the bank has to do when you take out a mortgage. Instead, you're going to get the money on the day of closing. So now you've got all that money for retirement. Yay, you can go out and spend it. There's no family succession issues that you have to worry about. You don't have to worry about fights amongst your children as to, who's going to take over the business, or, Johnny doesn't really work in the business. So why should Johnny get the same amount of money that I, Mary, am getting when I'm the one who's actually working in the business and running the day-to-day operations? The other benefit to selling to a third party is that you can close faster. Again, instant money at closing on there. It's cash in hand, either through them bringing you the money out of their own pocket at a cash closing, or you receive the money at closing from the bank because they've secured a loan with that bank. But here is the downside of selling to a third party. Okay, the biggest downside is you are only going to receive what that third party is willing to pay. In other words, what that third party has valued your business. It's not necessarily going to be what you think your business is worth. Okay. Another downside to selling to a third party is if you have employees, there is a possibility that that third party is going to come in and not keep some or all of your employees. And if you have long-term employees whom have worked alongside you for many years, that can be a little disturbing. And, some business owners get very distraught at the fact that, they're ready to retire, but their employees aren't ready to retire and are not ready to be out of a job. So selling to a third party could be a little risky for your employees, and the fact that they may be out of a job when you retire. So that's just something to keep in mind. Next, we're going to switch into what if you want to transfer the business, keep it within the family.
Gotta keep the business in the family.
Keeping the business in the family is a goal of a lot of my small business owner clients. They may have inherited the business from their parents, or they've started up their own business, which is usually the case, and they've worked very hard and built a successful business. And they want to make sure that the business continues on when they retire. So one way to do that is through transferring it to your children. And when you transfer it to your children, this allows your family, your children, to continue your legacy. Chances are your children are going to run the business similarly to how you ran the business. They're going to have your values and your morals that you had, and they're going to continue running the business under those values. Now, keep in mind that you can gift your business to your children by using your lifetime exclusion amount. Right now in 2022, that amount is for a single person is a little less than $13 million. So it's a huge way to gift the business to your children, and that way they're not going to have to incur any estate tax of receiving the business at your death. Kind of a little complicated. You can also do you use your lifetime exclusion amount of $16,000 by gifting them, shares $16,000 or less here in 2022. But you have to be careful if you're going to be transferring, in small increments, values of your company to your kids. Because if you discount the value of the business when you're making the gifts, you may be setting them up for huge capital gains down the road when they in turn are looking to sell the business. And it may devalue your company for a third party purchase, years down the road if they decide ultimately they don't want to continue running the business. So one way you can ease the transfer of the business to family members is, I tell my clients, if you're planning on transferring your business to a family member, lay out a succession plan. And what do I mean by that? I usually recommend starting 5 years before you want to retire. You bring your child or children in the company if they're not already working in the company in that 5-year mark, and you start slowly shifting them into varying roles. The company, not a good idea to bring them right in at the president or at the top. It's usually a good idea to start them, somewhere in the middle. You could start them from the ground up and have them work through, but, bring them in at least the middle level. And that way you can slowly give them more responsibility, and you can introduce them to your employees. Your employees get used to the leadership style of your child. They kind of understand that this person is going to ultimately be taking over the company. And it's also a good idea for your clients and customers, because you can slowly in that 5-year mark, start introducing your child to, your current clients or customers, so that they, one, know that this person is eventually going to take over the company and they're not going to be in complete shock. And two, they also have a chance to get used to working with that person. It just makes a much smoother transition process. If you are going to transfer within your family, you may want to consider using a family limited.
How can we not talk about family?
Because we need to talk about family, on here. And how can we not talk about family when we're thinking about transferring our business? So the family limited partnership, essentially you set one up, and essentially what you're going to do is you're going to transfer the business into the partnership in exchange for partnership shares. They can be limited or general. You then, with an estate planning attorney, are going to set up an intentionally defective trust for your children, because all your shares, some or all of the shares of the company are in this limited family partnership. Okay, this is now the entity that is running your business. The intentionally defective trust. Do I want to create something that has the word defective in it? I know that's what you're thinking out there. Yes, you may want to do this. Don't let the name scare you. Essentially, what that means is this is a trust where the grantor, you, the business owner, are the owner of the trust. You're the one that sets up the trust. Now, but you relinquishing control of the assets to anything you put in that trust. Your children or other family members are the beneficiaries of whatever's in the trust. You yourself are not a beneficiary of whatever gets put in the trust. Okay, that's why it's called an intentionally defective trust, because normally in a trust, you are setting it up where you, the grantor, are also the beneficiary. Hence the name defective, because now we've created a trust that you've set up, but you're not the beneficiary, and you intentionally wanted to accomplish that result. So hence the name. So what am I talking about? So once we have that trust, anything in the trust, you, the business owner, will continue paying the income taxes on what's in the trust because you're the grantor on here. And it's really not going to change anything because as a business owner, you were already paying the taxes, but you have relinquished asset ownership. Now, what this means is you no longer own those assets once they're in the trust. So when you pass on, then your children or other family members who are the beneficiaries of that trust are going to receive those business shares tax-free up to the estate, the federal estate tax exemption amount, which right now for a single person, as I mentioned, is a little less than $13 million. Now, one caution with these intentionally defective grantor trust, these are irrevocable. And what does that mean? That means that unlike a typical trust that you set up, you cannot make changes to this trust once you set it up. So whatever parameters you set on how the assets are going to be distributed can never be changed. You can't change the beneficiaries. So, because you've given up all control, remember. So you really want to work with an attorney to make sure that all of your goals are going to be accomplished. And you have to understand you can't make changes. You got to be very careful on setting these up. So, but the important thing is once you get these set up, anything received in the trust are going to be received by your kids tax-free because one, they're going to pass via that exemption. And also if there is any tax paid, the trust is going to pay those taxes before issuing out the distributions to your children. So you can keep the general shares during your lifetime. If you want to retain control of the company, you can always give some or all of them at a later date. But this is just one way where you can remain in the company, but knowing that you've already handled the transfer of the company when you pass on. This is also any assets that are placed in that trust are going to give your children a little bit of extra protection from creditors or from, potential divorces or claims for child support regarding whatever's in that trust, because whatever's in that trust is exempt from third-party persons attaching those. So it could be a huge benefit to your children where they can have wealth. They have the benefit of the wealth of the company shares, but they don't have the liability, the personal liability that their company shares could be attached by somebody on the outside. So potentially huge benefits for your children. So obviously when we're considering transferring shares to our family members, we want to keep everything, within the family together. So we kind of touched on this. If you don't want to do the family partnership trust because you want to keep control of the company until you pass on, then just setting up that intentionally defective grantor trust that we talked about is a beautiful way to accomplish that. Because again, you can gift some or all of your existing stock or ownership interest into that intentionally defective trust during your lifetime. Again, those trust assets cannot be attached by, any ex-spouses of your children or any other creditors of your children, because again, that trust is irrevocable. So, but again, you really don't set these up on your own, folks. Don't think you can do it. Well, you can try, but you have to be very, very careful, and you need to go to an experienced attorney who knows how to set these up for you and can explain all of the pros and cons with these trusts. So those are some options for how you can transfer your business to your family members if you want it, as opposed to selling to that third party. Now, another option is, what if we transfer the business to our employees? Employees are, they're the one, sometimes our employees have been with us for years. The beauty of transferring to an employee is they already know how the business is run. They know the people who are working in the business. They're usually familiar either with the customers or at least, how the customer relationships and how the business, meets the customer's demands. So it kind of allows a smoother transition to occur when you are transferring the business to your employees. It's also a great way to, give your employees incentives to stay with the company and to reward faithful service. Because if they know, hey, I'm going to be retiring, the boss, am going to be retiring and, 5 years down the road, and I really would like to, keep the business, my business. I want to offer it first to you, my employees, or you, my employee, if you just want to offer it to a select group of people as opposed to the entire company. But that way they're like, ooh, wow, I might actually, not only am I receiving a salary and maybe bonuses from this company, but now I may be able to have an ownership stake in the company. Guarantee you it's going to be a huge morale booster. So that's definitely something you might want to consider. It's also a more flexible option for you, the business employee, employer, because you can be more flexible with the terms. You can set out a payment arrangement. You can discuss, your role in the company. Are you going to complete at a set date? Are you going to completely step out and the business will be then run by the new ownership? Are you going to want to maintain some control or some position in the company? So it allows you to kind of set up a structure that you're comfortable with during the transfer, because when you sell to a third party, they're going to want you out of the company usually completely so that they can come in and do business their way. So that's a great option to consider if you want to, still have some say in how your company is being run, as well as how much say you want to have, if that's your desire. So there are a couple of ways to accomplish the transfer to employees. Because, one is you can do a management buyout. Because, buyouts are great. Essentially what happens in a management buyout is your employers, form a management team. Those that want to buy into the company, they go and get financing from a bank or other source. It may be you're going to be self-financing the sale for them. It may be they're going to find investors who are going to invest and help them come up with the funds in order to purchase the business from you. Essentially, you and the team sit down and y'all arrange a deal for the team to buy the business assets and operations. Again, you talk about financing. Are you going to be contributing, doing a loan to these employees, this management team to purchase the business? Are they going to be going out and raising money, or are they going to secure a loan? How is the transfer going to occur? Is it going to be a gradual transfer where you're slowly going to ease out of the company? Or are you going to be completely out of the company on the day of the sale? This option gives you a lot more flexibility because you get to control how the business is going to be sold. You're going to control all of the aspects of it. It's going to be a quicker transaction. It's going to be more confidential because obviously if you're selling to a third party, you got to go out and advertise the business. If you're planning on selling within the company, then at the beginning of this plan, only you and the potential employee buyers are going to know about this option. The general public will find out after the sale has occurred. It's also a way where you can ensure that most, if not all of your employees are going to be kept. You also can rest assured that most likely the business is going to again continue along the standards that you had set, and that the customers and clients will be happy because even though ownership is transferred, it's the same key people in place that they've always dealt with. So it's going to be a little more like it's going to be a little more likely that your customers and clients will remain with the business as well as your employees. Another option is ESOP. Now I said ESOP, not Shebop, which is why that little clip was played. ESOP's a funny little word. It's kind of fun to say, but essentially what ESOP is, it's an employee stock ownership plan. Sounds much better when you say ESOP than when you say the full name. So essentially what happens with an ESOP, you sell your company to the ESOP, and then you take back a note for the value of your interest. So essentially what you're doing is you're selling your shares, your stock, your interest in the company. You're not selling the assets. You're just selling the ownership portion of it to the company. So any taxes that are owed are capital gains and not ordinary income taxes. Employees become plan participants. Essentially what that is your employees receive ownership interest in the company. Okay, the company's paying you back out of the profits, but your employees are gaining, slowly gaining ownership interest in the company. So let's say, employee A over here has been a great employee for the past 10 years. You want to reward that employee's service. So you give that employee 10% of the shares in that ESOP that you've set up. So now that while you're still in the company and the company's still running, employee A is going to receive 10% of the profits of the company on top of whatever else you were paying them. And slowly in an ESOP, you're going to transfer more and more of the company's shares out. So it's a good way for you to phase out of the business. Again, if your goal is that 5-year mark, you start slowly distributing the shares amongst your employees until you have essentially transferred all of the ownership interest, all 100% to your employees. And again, the note is being paid off from the excess cash flow of the business. So you're still receiving the benefit for what you've given up, but it, again, just allows a more smoother transaction. It also helps employees become owners in the company of your choosing, who may not have otherwise been able to, go out and afford to get a loan or have the cash to actually buy into the business. So it's a great arrangement for both you and your employees. So we've talked about ways to transfer your business to persons while you're through a plan that you've crafted. But I would be remiss if I didn't mention incapacity planning.
Got into an accident and couldn't come to school.
As the song said, you could get into an accident and not be able to make it to work. I know the song said school, but in this case, it's work. You could be heading to work one day and be involved in a head-on collision and you suffer a traumatic brain injury. Well, and now you can't run your business. Who's going to run your business? We need to have a plan in place before that accident happens. We need to have something in writing where we've got a person or persons who can step into your business, who can manage the business for you, who can make day-to-day decisions for the business until you're able to return to the business. If you're not able to return to the business, they can at least keep it running and while it's going through the winding down process, whether that be through a sale to a third party, which is probably going to be the better option as opposed to doing a transfer to, well, you could still do a transfer to employees. I take that back. But whether you're going to sell the business to someone or whether you're just going to eventually wind down the business, liquidate it, and then distribute, any profits after any business expenses have been paid to you. So you definitely want to sit down with an estate planning attorney to come up with planning for your incapacity, not only who's going to be able to run your business in your absence, but also who's going to be able to make financial and medical decisions for you as well, should you, have an accident and become disabled, whether it be a temporary disability or whether it be a permanent disability. So we need to get those plans in place now before they happen. So some takeaways to remember, when you're a business owner, you are very busy. You are running your business. You're wearing a lot of hats. You're marketing, you're, selling, you're, maybe doing the actual work and the production. And there's just so much going on. And unfortunately, especially if you're a small time business owner, you're doing most of that work yourself. But no excuses. You still need to be prepared for when you decide to leave your business or when you can't be there. So you need to get a plan in place. I can't stress to you how crucial it is because life happens. None of us know what's going to happen, tomorrow or 5 years down the road. We may plan to retire in 20 years, but we may have suffer a stroke or some other debilitating event that causes us to change our retirement plan. So now we can't retire in 20 years. We're forced to retire, on the day that we have that stroke. So we need to have a plan in place. Don't wait until, you decide to retire or until that event happens before you start making your plans. So start meeting with your business attorney, your estate planning attorney, and work with them, your CPA, your financial advisor. All of those individuals are your core team. And your life insurance agent, because didn't really touch on the key man life insurance, but that's another value. If you've got a partner in the business, you should have in place. Essentially, you want to work with this team of professionals and start working on a plan, and then putting that plan in place once you have the plan. So what should you do next? Well, again, first sit down and figure out, do I want this business to continue on when I retire or when I die? 2, if I do want the business to continue on, who's going to take it over? Am I going to sell it? Am I going to give it to a family member? Am I going to, give it to or work out a plan where my employees get the business? How am I going to let my customers and clients know? How am I going to ease the potential buyer into the role of either moving from an employee or from an outside position into the leadership role? If you're not going to keep the business in place when you retire or when you pass on and you don't want to sell it to somebody, then how are you going to wind up the business? How are you going to let your customers know you're going to be going out of business? When are you going to let them know? When are you going to let your employees know? How is this going to be accomplished? What needs to be done to accomplish all of this? And what's going to happen ultimately when, not when, but if you become incapacitated? How is your business going to continue functioning? Do you have somebody lined up who's going to be able to step in and handle your customers while you're gone? Do you have somebody in place who's going to be able to make decisions on behalf of the business, who's going to be answering those phone calls and emails when you're not able to be in the office, to explain that, something has happened and to be able to refer them on to another business owner who can help them with their problems temporarily. And it's probably a good idea if you're going to do that, you want to already have a relationship with that business owner and a gentleman's understanding that they're not going to poach these clients. They're just going to take care of them in your absence. And then provided the clients want to, that the clients will come back to you. So these are all things that you should do next. And then once you figure out how you want your business or what you want to happen to your business, then you need to sit down and meet with those team of professionals that I mentioned earlier. And you want to start formulating a plan and laying out the action steps. So the most important takeaway from today is make a plan today. At least start thinking about these things and then start putting them in writing and getting that plan laid out. And weigh your options, figure out there's no right or wrong answer. You may want to have plan A. You may want to, and then if plan A doesn't work, have plan B, because sometimes we may think that our kids want to take over the business and we lay out that business succession plan for our kids. And then our kids are like, I don't want the business on here. So that's great. But if we don't have a plan B in place, then it's essentially like we never had a plan in the first place. So start formulating the different plans for how your business is going to transition, or at least how you envision or ultimately want the business, plan A being best case scenario, all the way down to plan D, the worst case scenario, which would be the winding down of the business. So if I can help you in any way with this and brainstorming, reach out to me at kmackintosh@nclegalcounsel.com, or you can contact me at 919-535-9131. My information is to the left of the screen. And I do thank you so much for your time. Hopefully I've given you some things to think about and some options to consider. Again, there's no right or wrong answer. The only wrong, except for not having a plan at all in place. So if there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer those questions. And again, I do thank you so much for your time and attention today. Thanks, everybody, and have a great day. And until next time, remember what I always say, stay happy.